Today, going to be talking basically like how to show a house, really. So it's Showings 101. I share a lot of my tips and tricks, but maybe like a month or so ago, more so than today, I was definitely encouraging my buyers, if they really want to win, that we really have to be putting some terms on the inspection terms as a chance to win or have our offers accepted. If you say, let's say you say, actually you probably waive inspection on that, that's gonna blow some first timers' mind. However, if you're doing a good enough job at the showing, talking about the big issues, pointing out all the little stuff, all the big stuff, they really should have a high level of confidence going into a contract where it's not gonna get busted come home inspection if you do end up doing one, or come down the road. And so the more we can do during the showing to prevent that, the higher our success rate, right? Like it's like in baseball, your batting average. We've joked on our team, like if we actually track that, there's certain members on my team that they would have a really bad batting average because they get more releases than like anybody else there is. There was an agent who, not on my team anymore. It was almost a guarantee every time he got something under contract, the home inspection would bust it. Part of it, in my opinion, was the home inspection we used, but then also part of it is not doing a good enough job on the front end, even before you go into contract. And so what I ended up doing is I filmed myself walking through some vacant properties. I got about 30 minutes of footage of me walking through 4 different houses, and I think what I'll do is I'll just show the little snippets, one house at a time, and then we'll hit a little stop button and have some conversation. The hope is that you're kind of pulling some notes and some nuggets from the video clips, and then also from the conversations had by the group as a whole. So I'm expecting or wanting some participation from the room and giving some insights and some tips of their own. And I guess with that too, there's a disclaimer of this is just how I do it. And the greatest thing about real estate is you can do it differently. You can do it however the heck you want. I might be wrong on a lot of this stuff too. I'm just going based off my own experience and the limited amount of knowledge that I have. You guys in this room, a lot of you are a lot smarter than me, and maybe even be more specifically trained in certain areas. And so that's where I'm really hoping that there'll be some group conversations and some tips and some advice and some commentary along the way. I'll start off by saying this too. If you are a brand new agent, it took me all of 5 minutes to be able to walk through or be able to kind of think through what 4 houses I would just walk through. And so if you don't know, there's a little showing instruction note on MLS called LB Go Direct. Anybody know what that is? It's kind of old school. What's LB Go Direct?
Just go and show.
Go and show. Yeah, you just can. You don't have to book an appointment or anything. You can just walk into that house. Funny thing about that though is some of the listing agents who put LB Go Direct don't know that's what that actually means. So like I went to this one house that said, I did a little filter, I did LB Go Direct, and like people are definitely living there, and I always knock on the door, ring the doorbell before I go in, or even before I access the showing box. And then I pulled off my printout again, and it was stupid. It was appointment required, LB Go Direct. Those mean exactly the complete opposite of one another. So if you just search on MLS, LB Go Direct and showing instructions, it's like a drop-down filter. You can find houses that are just available for you to walk through anytime. Another little trick that I learned is if you open up your Showing Time app, and you go to schedule a showing, there's a part that says like near me or nearby me. And that just lists every single house that's listed near you, and then you can just scroll through that and look for, either say appointment required, or it'll say courtesy call and show. So some people might not put LB Go Direct on MLS, but they have their showing time settings as in essence lockbox Go Direct. And so if you're scrolling through nearby to me, and if you see one that says courtesy call and show, that means as soon as you pluck a date and a time on there, you're immediately you're immediately confirmed that you can go show that house. And so I did that where, you know, I'm standing in the driveway, hit the button. Now my showing is confirmed. It's, you know, it's tracked in showing time, but I can also immediately go into the house. So if you're a brand new agent, I mean, even doing what I did of like filming some stuff, super helpful because you're getting to see actual properties. You're getting to be able to have conversations with other people about actual houses that you saw. You can talk about a house that you saw over in Wyndham Forest. You know, you can then have some conversations with people as you're doing that face-to-face, belly-to-belly type of conversation. That's my little tips and tricks there. So I think I set the stage. So I'll pause the video because, like I said, it is like 29 minutes. And then we'll have some conversations and think about some notes that you want to jot for yourself, as well as some input or some feedback that you'd want to provide as well. So this one is right down the road. Wyndham Forest, 5401 Bennett Lane, listed for $719, built in 2001. So maybe I'll even kind of quiz you guys on this already. House is built in 2001. What are some important things to maybe look at?
Roof.
Okay, roof, why?
Roof's like 30-year roof.
Could be a 23-year-old roof, right? That would be acceptable, right? You could have a 23-year-old roof. Could be a brand new roof. What else would you might want to look at a 2001?
HVAC.
HVAC, yeah. So why HVAC?
Well, because the age of it would indicate when you may have to replace it.
Yeah. So again, this might be somewhere in these video clips. For me, an entirely electric HVAC system, I usually tell folks can last 10 to 15 years. If it's a gas furnace, electric air conditioning, I say it could be 15 to 20 years. And then I always kind of back that up too, where in almost any of these age-related items, I usually say something of, you know, but this is also similar to like an oil change. Do they recommend you changing your oil every, 5,000 miles? Sure. Can you drive a car 7, 8, 9,000 miles? Sure, as long as you're keeping an eye on some of the other maintenance items and keeping a good track of it. So I can always use that to not be like an absolute of at 15 years you must replace your HVAC, or at 30 years you must replace your roof. Could be earlier, could be later. But I just give folks a general range so they know how to budget, in their mind. Anything else on a 2001 that you already know about right off the bat?
Crawl space, big ticket item.
Yeah, crawl space we're gonna wanna look at for sure. Really doesn't matter what year it is, right? Like that's the one that I'm always looking at. I was gonna use this story later, but I closed a house, 1.5 million. Built a couple of years ago, so pretty new house, nice clean crawl space, encapsulated crawl space. And one of the home inspection items was that the condensate pump in the crawl space wasn't working and we needed to replace it. So I sent them the receipt from James River Air, hey, we replaced the condensate pump, but she wanted to hire her home inspector to come back out for the $150 charge to check this condensate pump, and then to check the condensate lines outside the house, where they fall like 6 inches from the brick. This home inspector said it needs to be many feet away, which he said that's just normal. And I was like, I've never ever seen a condensate line from an HVAC not fall within inches of the house. And someone's coming from the ceiling, like up in the soffit. But anyways, we extended that, and there was like one other extensions on the gutters. So those were the 3 items we agreed to fix, and she wanted to hire the home inspector to come back out and check these 3 items. And I was like, look, I gave you receipts, and most of these things you can just look at yourself. Like, it's just put your eyeballs on. Like, it used to have no extension, now it does. And she's like, well, what about the condensate pump? I said, well, here's the receipt for the condensate pump, and like you can see it's right there in the crawl space. She's like, I'm not going in the crawl space. And it's like a nice, clean, tall, 1.5 million, $40,000 payday, and she was unwilling to creak the crawl space door open and peek. So I personally went over to the listing, and went the 2 feet into the crawl space, took some pictures and said, okay, you know, maybe you could not hire your home inspector to see that this has been fixed, but crawl spaces are huge. You know, at a bare minimum, at least crack the door open and stick your head in. So, what else might you already know about a 2001 house that's important, or something that to be on the lookout for? Okay, 2001. What do you think? What about the piping?
If it's gray.
Okay. Yeah, so you're talking polybutylene. What do you guys know about polybutylene pipes?
Insurance company.
What do you say?
It self-corrodes from the inside out according to what chemicals go through it. It can cause flooding,
What
spontaneous.
else do you guys hear about polybutylene?
That was the mechanics.
It deteriorates over time, doesn't
You guys tell me.
The big one was the clamp for the crimps. They wear out so they don't get crimped as tight, so they leak at any elbows or tees.
Yeah, polybutylene pipes, that's like probably a whole different, whole separate class. My understanding of polybutylene pipes is this is like early 90s, almost any big neighborhood, that's all they built with was polybutylene pipes. If you WebMD it, you're gonna be convinced pipes are just gonna start bursting any second of the day. It's a ticking time bomb. And if you WebMD it, if you call your insurance, you can't have homeowners insurance. But guess what? Everybody in King's Charter has homeowners insurance. Guess how many of those houses have polybutylene pipes? Probably all of them. Like, so it's one of those things. But sure, if you call the insurance company up and say, hey, I've got some of these dangerous things, can you give me a policy? They're going to be like, no. But on the typical insurance questionnaire, that's not a question that they ask. And so it goes based off of your homeowner's insurance application. But something to be mindful of if you're a listing agent with polybutylene pipes, because people will try to pitch that story of, well, you know, we can't make it homeowner's insurance. And all I know is my own personal experience. I had State Farm homeowners insurance. I had polybutylene pipes. I had a leak that happened because I had people messing around in my bathroom. I had a $40,000 claim. I got paid a $40,000 claim. So, you know, it's possible. So, 2001 I think might be too new for polybutylene, but somebody can check
That's
me.
nice.
And my other understanding of polybutylene, it was more those fittings, but it was more within like the first couple years.
Yeah.
And it was all kind of about like the shoddy subcontractor. It was whoever the subcontractor was, and it was more the fittings, and it was more within the first couple years. And so if you're now a 30-year-old house, the risk there, I would say, is relatively low. So, all right, let me just play this video, and then we'll talk some more. I forgot to start talking into the camera, but I was looking at the roof. That was my first thing. So I always look at the roof. I meet clients out front. So we're going to talk about windows, roof, siding, heat pump, and crawl space. So that roof.
See the roof that's been replaced.
So here's my little trick
Holes
up in the
like
attic.
this here, where a nail used to puncture through. But then you have another hole right here where the nail did puncture through. You don't see these holes where there used to be a nail all over the place. And that's because they've removed the old roof. And so when they shimmied up the old shingles, they plucked those nails out, and then these nails are now the new roof nails. For windows, we're just looking to see if they're vinyl windows. And then on the outside, there it could be a wooden window with aluminum wrap or vinyl wrap. Could still be wood there, but this is vinyl. So looking for vinyl. And then I might talk to clients about if there's hazing in the window just from where the seal is busted, and just pointing that out for them ahead of time. Toilets, I usually tell them that basically every toilet is loose. A little bit written up on every home inspection, whether it's the tank part or the bowl part, just from constant body weight, sitting and squatting on it, and it becomes loose. So, all right, you may already know this, but easy way of knowing if something is gas or not is looking for the flues. So this is obviously a gas water heater, it has that gas flue, and then obviously a gas furnace because it has that flue pipe. Another easy way of telling is if there's a parking ballard thing here, thing from stopping cars from hitting the gas line. Another thing that always gets written up on home inspections is the TPR valve, pressure relief valve. Technically, this is supposed to be, I want to say we're within 6 inches of the ground. So this gets written up a lot of times too when you have a stand like this. I think technically that's supposed to go down within 6 inches of the ground. But more often than not, you won't see this pipe at all, or it'll be a real short pipe. So that's something to point out. And my big ticket items, I don't usually put a water heater in because an electric water heater only costs a couple $100, maybe 500. Gas does tend to be a little bit more expensive once you add in the labor to swap it, but still maybe $1,000 compared to a roof being like 20,000. Little electrical tip, this is the breaker. That's how many amp service this one has. So 200 amp service on that one. And then usually say everything has usually a double lug neutrals and unground breakers. Usually in the garage too, you'll also find it has an irrigation system. So easy way telling here, other than looking for sprinkler heads, is if there's a control, usually in the garage. And then I'll also show you in the yard how you can find the different zones. All right, for porch railing, we're looking for aluminum there, concrete here, brick here. Another easy one on home inspection is inspectors will always want these gutters to extend out, 3-6 feet. So usually this doesn't suffice. So you can easily point that out to buyers if naturally you're going to want to extend water away from your house. All right, here's the easy way to tell if it has natural gas, having a gas meter out, and then irrigation. These little caps here are usually your different zones for irrigation, so you pop those up and there's different valves controlling different lines of irrigation. Decking here is nice and easy. This is a Trex decking or composite decking, so anything other than wood. And then same thing, kind of point out this being vinyl. So those materials just make it maintenance free, nice and easy. All right, so I always look at all the HVAC units. I don't just take the agent's word for it. So I walk the clients over a lot of times, show them this, and so I walk over, and then I'm trying to find this sticker here. So this sticker here, sometimes it shows a manufacture date. So on this one it does. I see it says manufactured July 2017. The other trick is up at this serial number. For this unit, the 3rd and the 4th number represent the year. So this was made in 2017, so chances are it was installed in 17 or 18 on this one. And then this cute little, my gimbal messed up. This cute little guy. Sorry, this cute little guy. Looking at that number, looks like 2001, using that same 3rd and 4th number. And sometimes what I'll actually do is take a picture of this because it's in an awkward position. But the other big note on this one is it's R22. So this is the old Freon. It's 2001, 23 years old. And it uses the old Freon, where this one uses 410L, this new Freon. All right, our favorite, a crawl space. So always poke my head in this one, in these. This is a pretty easy one. It's a nice tall door, not gonna get too dirty. But even just that first opening of the door, if there was a problem, you catch a big whiff. This one looks pretty normal. What I'm looking for is fallen or stringy insulation. I'm looking to see if the vapor barrier covers all the way to the edges. You know, a lot of times it gets disheveled right here, where people are storing stuff or getting in and out. You know, that one's could be pulled a little bit to the side, but overall this looks really good. Another little tip I would say is almost all the times that I have houses with termites, it's not the actual house that has termites, it's when people store scrap wood in the crawl space. And then that will have termite tubes, and then we have to treat the whole house. So I always tell my sellers to get rid of scrap wood. And then sometimes you can look up here and there'll be a little bit of fuzz on the joist, some spores for mold activity. But I usually tell folks, you know, that there's normal amounts of moisture and mold in crawl spaces, and then there's abnormal. So this looks like a normal crawl space. It's got a good insulation up in the floor joist, and then the vapor barrier is spread out all down here. So you can kind of poke your head in, or this one actually crawled in. Another nice little thing to point out here is this is a really quality built fence. And I know this because they use 6x6 post on the gate, so gates just are a little bit more, you know, structurally neat. So nice 6x6 here, where you can compare that to the size of typical post is 4x4. So nice 6x6 is a nice quality fence.
Alright, so that's the first house. It's longer than the rest, so hang in there. But what are some maybe things you learned or kind of took out from just that little quick walkthrough?
The roof and I've never even, that's a great tip. And then,
Yeah, super good on a rainy day. I mean, usually I stand out on the street. It's one of the first things I look at. But on a rainy day, you know, you're not going to be standing out there, so you can go up in the attic.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah,
And then
especially
the,
with these houses where it's only most likely been replaced once or never. So if it's already, you know, if it's a 1970s house, it doesn't quite work. Yeah. What else?
the HVAC, that was good tips, awesome.
Yeah, every once in a while it's not third and fourth, and all you do is a quick Google for that manufacturer, and sometimes it's the first and second. Anything else you learned? Any little tip you might put in your tool belt?
What's the gas?
Yeah. Yeah, so I should have said too, for me, I'll meet the client, and this is, even if it's a client I've shown 20 houses to, it's at the front door, we say, hey, all right, we're gonna look at windows, roof, siding, heat pump, and crawl space. And so before I even enter the house, we're gonna look at the roof, we're gonna look at the siding, I'm gonna tap on the siding depending on what it is, and I'm gonna start looking at windows. Then I go inside, then I do all my stuff inside, and let me ask this. If you see that it has like a gas furnace or a gas cooktop, what might you wanna look for outside?
What's the source of the gas?
Yeah, what's the
A
source?
tank.
And so, how do you know what the source is?
Meter.
If it's a gas meter, then it's natural gas. If there's no gas meter, then what could it be?
Propane.
Okay, so how do you know propane tank?
It's either above ground or it's.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big 60 gallon or 100 gallon or whatever, standing just next to, you know, the wall. Or if you don't see that, another possibility is it's an underground tank, and usually it's probably like a green lid, you know? Or it could be that they used to have an above ground tank and it's no longer there, so gas isn't in service. But the only reason why you look for gas is if you see those flues or if you see a gas cooktop. But because I kind of do a quick little on the outside, then I do everything inside, then I go back around to basically the backyard. I also do that definitely right now too, where all these listing agents are maxing you out at 30 minutes. That's a pretty short, I mean, we used to go schedule for like an hour, and like, you know, really stack our showings. Now it's here's your 30 minutes to get out. And so if I do have another showing right behind me, then I can say, hey, you guys go ahead and go inside. We're still gonna look in the backyard, so then I can do my backyard stuff. Anything else you learned in that one?
When you tap on the siding, what are you looking for?
Well, that's just more like from experience, but just kind of like how it taps. Like, you definitely, I'm going to do that for hardboard masonite siding. I tell folks that's the worst siding you can have. It just always is going to rot. It's always going to require some maintenance. And I don't feel like you're tapping on a cardboard box, because that's in essence what it is. It's particle board kind of pressed in. A lot of agents, and this is where I don't ever trust a listing agent on most of these big stuff, because they get it wrong all the time. I had one, it was their own personal house, and they got a lot of things wrong that I kind of questioned about, like, oh, sorry, like that's what the seller before us told us. I was like, well, it was very easy for me to look at the heat pump and see that you were off by 10 years on that HVAC. But hard board and hardy plank get mistaken all the time. Hard board, worst thing ever. Hardy plank, really the best thing ever. It's cement board. So cement board is gonna have a whole lot better of a click sound than pressed wood together that just absorbs water. So I'm looking for that tapping. Same thing with like balusters and railings and even sometimes like on a bathroom, like I'll tap to see, is that ceramic tile or is that like a vinyl looking with grout? Because they do have these like vinyl grout ones, so it appears like it's ceramic, but then it doesn't click like ceramic. So yeah. Anything else you learned?
I've learned a lot, but I have a question. So, in your exterior walkthrough, is the foundation ever part of the big things you hit?
Yeah, so good question. On none of the houses, these 4 houses I didn't really look at, but what I do usually tell folks is, like a lot of buyers get freaked out that there's cracks in the foundation on the outside. And so I usually say, look, that's just an exterior veneer. Like there's cinder block and then there's just the trim, the veneer of brick in front of it. So that's okay if it's cracked. That actually is pretty normal. But if it's significant, we want to actually look inside from the crawl space and see if those cracks line up. Because chances are it's just the fascia, it's just the front, it's the brick. But everybody gets freaked out about foundations. I think I've sold somewhere like in the 600 to 700 range of houses personally. I think I only had one foundation issue ever. Like it's just like the houses, they'd be crumbling. Like you'd see big, significant things. Like an average person wouldn't be living in a house that has foundation issues and not know it, and then wouldn't be obvious to other people. That's my own personal take. So I have a lot of strong personal takes.
Share
on things. So, anybody, I'm open to be corrected. Anything there that I said that was wrong? I haven't personally replaced a gas water heater in a while, or actually ever.
I was gonna say my plumber wants to go more expensive.
It could be like 2,000, 3,000.
Yeah, it is, about 2,000.
Yeah.
People are going to the tankless.
Yeah, what's that?
People are going to the tankless.
Yeah. But how much does the gas water heater itself cost?
$1,200.
Just to buy it?
Yeah. It depends on the size.
Did you know, I heard you talking about refrigerant on there, did you know they were changing the
Yeah, all new Freons now, yeah, so now I got a whole new
Okay.
Freon. So now if you really have R22, you're really old, because there's a whole new Freon coming out. Anybody know if I'm right about the pressure relief valve when it's up on a stand? I think it still has to go down to your like ground level.
6 inches,
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's lifted or not lifted, I think it's still 6 inches from the ground. So. All right, let's do another one. The other ones will be quicker. Thank you, I promise. All right, so this one.
All right, here's one. I couldn't even get my car up this driveway.
Let me preface it this way. This is like me, like when I'm walking my buyers through a house, like this is all the stuff that I'm telling them, and I'm trying to tell them like, hey, don't be surprised if we see this come home inspection, because I'm trying to make myself look like somebody who knows a whole lot. I'm a market expert, and so then what's really great is they do the home inspection and they go over the highlights and they're like, oh yeah, we knew that. Like, yeah, Tommy told us that one. Yeah, we already saw that. And that's my hope is come home inspection, there's no new news other than silly double neutrals and multi-wire branch circuit crap stuff, reverse polarity, stuff that you actually kind of have to take things apart for and look at.
It's too steep, so I do talk about driveways, but I usually say I'd rather be above the road than below the road. So this house definitely sits above the road. And another thing I talk about for topography is it's okay if I have a tall driveway as long as there's a nice flat spot here for me to park my car, and you can definitely park a car flat without having to hit the e-brakes. That's an okay thing. And obviously the asphalt needs to be reworked here. House was built in 1989, but that roof looks like it's been recently replaced. Nice dimensional shingles, vinyl siding, and then 89 could be on the cusp of wooden windows, or they could be replaced vinyl. So that's another thing that we'll look at first. Another one for aluminum rails. And then, yeah, vinyl windows. Something else you might look at, which I see on every single house, is usually underneath the kitchen sink. This is where this has leaked at some point, and you just kind of check how solid this is. But not uncommon to see this all rotted out from a past leak. And sometimes that gets people all freaked out, but might as well go ahead and look at it. All right, another garage here. So I just kind of look around to see what I can find, see if there's any irrigation on the wall. You have your electric panel here, and then it appears that there's no mechanicals, but they have a closet. So, all right, so on the closet here, no gas flue, so electric water heater, and actually looks fairly new. I never really look at these, but that looks fairly new. And then no gas flue here either, so it's going to be an electric heat pump. So, and then still no irrigation. Something else I just saw that's interesting on this one is that it's tack strip for carpet, and that would explain kind of this carpet area. So chances are at some point they had carpet down in this garage and used it as an extra room. The other telltale to me is that it looks like adhesive and then finish nails where they put some sort of baseboard or something along that wall. They try to make this a little more finished of an area. And then just confirming once again, these are vinyl windows here. So vinyl windows downstairs, but this house was built in 1989. So this is the original wood window. So that's something to look at, and usually when I tell folks is sometimes they're painted shut. And the other thing about wooden windows, depending on what material is right here, that's where water will sit and then start rotting. Essentially anything wood, just a matter of time before it rots. So house originally had wood windows, but they've replaced a good chunk of them. So that's a wooden window there too. Vinyl, vinyl, vinyl. Actually, sorry, that's vinyl, vinyl. So maybe just wooden windows on the back wall. Wooden, wooden, vinyl, 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 wooden. So yeah, they should do the upstairs back window. Extra little tip here, sometimes with families, there's a bedroom like this, and it has the walk-up attic inside the room, and they don't like that for little kids. And so one of the things I usually tell them is, you know, if you don't like that, an easy remedy is just add a lockup high or put some sort of other latch on it so that little kids aren't playing up in the attic without your permission. All right, so another attic, just confirming the roof was replaced. An easy way on this one is you can see the scraps of shingle material, and that's because what they ended up doing was adding a ridge vent. So a ridge vent, if it's retrofitted into an old house, they're literally cutting the plywood at the very tip of the peak so that it can then vent out. And so if it originally just had cable vents and that was the way it did air movement, a lot of times when people do a newer roof, they cut in a ridge vent and do ridge vent ventilation plus then the gable vents. And then same test over here on the sheathing. You can see the old holes where nails have again gotten pulled out, and then you can see the new holes where nails have been driven in. So this roof's definitely been replaced since 1989. You know, just easy math, if they replaced it 30 years, that'd be 2019, so it's 5 years old. if they replace it on the early side at 20 years, it would be a 15-year-old roof with, 30-year shingles. And then also while you're up here, you can just kind of poke around and look for any type of leaks. Traditionally, what's going to happen is there will be leaks around the vent pipes. So any of these pipes, usually they're going to be on the rear side of the house. And those rubber boot seals around all the vent pipes, they can dry rot and go bad in 10 years versus the shingles can last 30 years. So you might look around the vent pipes, and then also a good sunny day, you can see if there's any daylight coming through. Here's a little tip on balusters. Primarily thinking like exterior decks. Interior doesn't matter so much, but it's not really supposed to be more than 3 inches. So if you can make a fist and put it through, usually that's too wide. The other trick is like a soda can. Soda cans shouldn't be able to fit through these, because if that fits through, then a kid's head or pets can fit through. So I think that applies for interior balusters, but it definitely applies for exterior decks and balusters. See, this one's a little tighter. My fist can like barely get through. All right, again, always looking at heat pumps. It's a train, nothing runs like a train. Try to find that sticker. And easy one here, manufactured 19. And a little trick here, if you want to know whether it has Xfinity or Fios or whatever, these are the telecommunication boxes. It's got Xfinity, and I believe this would be Verizon box. All right, good example of a deck. I see decks almost wrong every single time, even on new construction. Let me go over to this post. So really, from my understanding, a good solid deck should not be bolted like this, because then it relies on the strength of the bolt. Sometimes it's just straight nailed. I think these lag bolts might suffice, but really you want that post to be notched where the joist is actually sitting on top of the post, bearing all the weight, and then you have your other joist attached to it. But on this one, it's just wrapping the 4x4 post with this bolt and this bolt. So all that weight is relying on the shear strength of those components. And then usually they almost never have hangers. So this one doesn't have joist hangers. There should be a metal hanger, joist hanger right here at the end. And then those should be used with big thick nails or fasteners. All right, fun crawl space here. It's underneath the bay window. I'm just gonna kind of poke in. It's very short, but I do see plastic all the way to the edge. That's good. Insulation's falling down a little bit. I'm not catching any big whiffs, so I might leave that one up to a home inspector, but otherwise it looks fairly normal. Nothing too bad. Here's an example of kind of what an inspector wants to see, those gutter extensions. You got one here, and then you have one over here. All right, so that's that house. What do you see on that one? Or what did you learn? Any little nuggets?
The deck.
That,
The deck information.
yeah, I think there is like a lag bolt thing that's permissible, but the best decks I've seen, and there's one, the next one, you're sitting on it.
Would an inspector flag that?
Yeah, my inspector usually says decks are kind of interesting because there's not a lot of regulation on decks. And so yeah, I see decks wrong all the time, but mostly when I'm wanting to tell my buyers ahead of time, like if we are able to get a home inspection, is don't be surprised if there's gonna be a bunch of issues on this deck, because they're almost always built wrong, and there's some things you can do to improve it. So they use that little leather strip that might be allowed, but usually I see joist hangers. Anything else? The window thing, I knew going into an 89 house, could be wood windows or could be old, because vinyl windows, really, I think they were like mid-90s was when they started becoming pretty mainstream. But that's a good example too, because if you just read the agent notes, they'd probably say all new vinyl windows. It's
it's like, yeah, all new vinyl windows, but sometimes I've seen all new vinyl windows except for an entire floor of the house. Or, you know, that one at least is just the back of the top of the house. But I'm sure, actually, they did that in the fact check. They probably said, you know, new windows, and so then you and the buyer are like, oh great, this house has new windows, except for, you know, however many it is. Anything else? I'm trying to think of anything that I remember. So again, you know, as I'm walking buyers through, I'm kind of showing those things. Sometimes I make a little joke with my buyers that at this point I could write an entire home inspection report on any house there is without ever seeing it, because all houses have some of the same normal stuff. And so hopefully what I'm trying to do there is get ahead of when we do get a summary of 20 items, that the buyers are gonna ask for all 20 items to be fixed, because I've already kind of prepped them on every house has issues. We're not making a house perfect, we're just trying to hit the big stuff. Yeah.
Is it a way to, what's the way to tell for the windows if it's, you said wrapped, I think in the first video?
Tapping, yeah. So either on the outside or on the inside. Yeah, you know, aluminum's gonna have more of a ting, but there also is like a composite, you know, plastic material too that you can wrap windows in. But I'm also then looking for caulk lines, you know, if it's aluminum or if it's not like a fully encased window, then you're gonna have caulk lines on those seams. And the thing about caulk lines is it just requires maintenance. The caulk is going to dry rot and crack. And once it does, now water is able to get in and behind that you know, wrap or that flashing. So then you're gonna have moisture problems. So either it's a maintenance problem or it's a moisture problem, or it's both. All right, let's do the next two are much, and the last one.
Here's another one, a little bit of an older house, but looks like a newer roof, good dimension versus, I'm not sure if you can see this roof over here. See how flat the shingles are? And then like way over there, those real flat shingles is what we usually call like a 3-tap shingle or like a 20-year shingle versus the dimensional shingle is considered more of a 30-year shingle. Now they're not putting years on them at all anymore. Essentially everything's just lifetime warranty. But for easy guessing of how long a roof lasts, 20 years on the flat shingles, 30 years on the dimensional shingles. All right, brick siding, that's an easy one. But here's an example of when it's an aluminum wrapped framing here. So you see a little nail, so it's an aluminum, you can also click on it. So aluminum wrapped windows, and we'll see on the inside whether they're wood or vinyl. All right, so it looks like a vinyl window on the inside. So we'll check all the windows, see if the whole house is vinyl or not. All right, so another big trick is anytime you have finished on-site hardwood floors, so that's where it's been sanded and sealed, it should be smooth as glass. And so see that nice sheen, you can see the way light bounces off. A lot of times I like walking around barefoot or in my socks, and I rub my feet across the seams, and if there's any cupping on the seams on a finished on-site hardwood floor like that, that is traditionally a sign of moisture problems, either above or below, and more often it's below, meaning that there's moisture going on in the crawl space. And especially if you see it kind of widespread, if it's throughout an entire room, or if it's throughout a couple different rooms, see that light bouncing off there, you would see that cupping at every seam if there was some moisture problem. So use your socks, rub your feet around, and see if you feel any cupping anywhere on these finished floors. So personal note on these glass doors, it's very nice and looks luxurious, but any family that's ever had to bathe a kid in these bathtubs know what a pain they are, because you always have this sharp edge that you're leaning over giving kids a bath. So not a great setup for families. Looks great, but not great for little toddler bathtub. No garage on this one, instead a utility room, but again, gas flow here, gas flow here. So that means we have a gas furnace and a gas water heater. And that's a train system. And then washer dryer hookup, washer there, and that's your dryer vent. So you can kind of be looking for those things. This is a sign of plumbing. That's like a plumbing vent, so it should vent all the way up through the roof, but otherwise that's a way of having a plumbing vent. Something here that you might not think about, which is there something missing? Do you notice what's missing?
Dishwasher.
No dishwasher. Might be important to let your folks know. Another thing while we're here is I always turn these on to see if it circulates out or recirculates. So I do that, and then I put my hand up here, see if I can feel the air blowing. Or you can actually look up, and sometimes you're lucky like this one, you can actually see the vent. Other times you might not see the vent up there, it's inside the wall. But that's why I put my hand up here to see if it's blowing out and just recirculating or whether it's venting outside. That's one way of routing the gutter. But then look, it's just aiming towards the house. And that's where water's collecting. So, not the best there. All right, another gas meter, so it's got gas. They wrapped that gutter around but didn't do this one. So this one could easily be kicked over to here. All right, another crawl space. A nice and tall door here. All right, so here's a good one. So no vapor barrier at all. This is an older house, 1963. So it did not require a vapor barrier at the time, but you know, would be good to add it. Same thing with insulation. There's no insulation up in the floors, so you want to keep that moisture down. It feels a little damper. It is kind of a wet day today, and this kind of feels a little muddy here. So I don't see anything outrageous. You can see some spores on the joist, so this would definitely get written up, but it's a relatively easy fix. Nice tall crawl space, so new vapor barrier, and if you want to add insulation, do a new insulation, and then mold remediation too, probably of scrubbing the joist. All right, so this deck has kind of what I was talking about. You can see this is the post right here, and it's notched down so that then that joist sits on top of the post, and then it's bolted through. So the main weight of this beam is right on this post, and then you put this on top of that. And then something else that's always gets written up is the flashing. So there's some sort of flashing here, but you want some sort of vapor protection from the house to the deck. This is brick, so it's a little bit easier, but on wood stuff that gets written up all the time. So yeah. We don't usually talk too much about trees, but this might be something you'd want to talk about. It's within feet away. And then, I mean, actually, that part of the branch is broken already. It's probably fallen onto the house. So, trees and their proximity, but then also look at the root system.
The roots are massive.
Any guess where that root might be going? Sheesh. All right, and then always looking at the heat pump. Another easy one because it has the date right there, manufactured 2006. And then you got the Freon is 410A on this one. So always looking at the heat pump. In terms of roof, we talked about this before, but these are the roof vent collar pipes right there. So those can go bad. There's a little rubber seal around the pipe as it enters into the house. Come on, but anyways, those can go bad in like 10 years, where The shingles can last 30 years, so they're usually gonna be on the back side of the house, and you can kind of lay eyes on them from here to see what type of shape they're in.
Alright? Anything you learn on that one?
Cast iron pipe,
That's all right, yeah. What do you know about that?
it's notorious in, like West End Manor. I've had people that sold and bought and had issues down the road going from the house to the street.
Yeah, usually I'd say for like north side, but yeah.
Oh yeah,
There's
West
areas too.
Ham, anybody
Cause
that's got,
that's the sewage pipe, big old cast iron, 3-4 inch diameter pipe. Those end up usually corroding, right?
yeah, they rust from the inside and they start weeping on the outside, you'll see it.
Yeah, and so even if you're on city water, you're responsible from your house to the street. So then sometimes you have to dig up the entire trench from your house to the street to replace those pipes. So you can see if those have been replaced already, or if it's still the original cast iron pipes.
I'd recommend a camera inspection on those.
Yep, so you can scope all the way to the street. Some of the older north side houses have like terracotta. It's like,
Yeah,
it works. The roots grow all through those. Anything else you learned on that one? There was something I was hoping to find in the houses I walked through that I ended up having conversations with people about, where there's baseboard heat. What do you guys think about baseboard heat? Good or bad? Okay, why bad?
Well, it could be electric, could be
The
radiator.
electric baseboard, just think electric baseboard, everything's got its own knob.
Expensive.
So it's expensive, is from what I've been told. So when a house has electric baseboard, that's where every room has its own dial, and there are these big old things that are electric, around each wall. They're notoriously expensive because it's solely electric. It's not a super efficient way of heating a house. But sometimes I'll look for those, but then I'll look for ceiling air registers. So if you have baseboard heat, but then you have ceiling registers, what could that mean?
They've replaced something with a heat pump.
Yeah,
Central air.
it has a heat pump.
You guys are both right. So it could be that it just has central air. So this does the heat, this does the air conditioning. It could be that this used to do the heat, now this does the heat and the air conditioning. So HVAC stuff kind of goes over my head, but I know some of the basics. So that's where like I would go, I don't know, try to look at an air handler. I still don't know if it's an air handler or a furnace, like the evening. I kind of know if it's a furnace versus just an air handler.
handler's usually about
Yeah, but if you had central air, you still have an air handler, right?
correct.
So then how do you tell the difference between if it just has central air or if it's dual functioning?
Usually, the outdoor unit is smaller if it's just a
Okay, yeah.
unit.
Yeah.
But now they're so big, some of them are, it's a little bit harder to tell now
Right.
versus 15 inches.
So that's where I'm gonna be looking at the listing and see if it specifically says heat pump. I'm gonna look at the size of the outside one, I'm gonna try to find the inside one.
You can look at the electrical panel. If it's got a heat strip in the air handler, it'll have to have a 30.
Separate,
or
a
50
separate breaker or just bigger?
Well, it'll be a bigger breaker
Okay.
for the heat.
Yeah, so that's one way of thinking about it. So that'd be something. Usually in that same conversation, I'm talking about folks with like, if it doesn't have a heat pump, but you still have the ductwork here for air conditioning, it would be an easy thing to switch over at a later time of just when that air conditioner bites it, go ahead and switch it over to a dual functioning heat
You
pump.
could do exactly what the home inspector does, is put it in heat mode, and it'll make the electric strips cut on, that way you know it's heat pump with electric strips.
It's easy. Yeah, okay, good.
So he's gonna do that.
Yeah, there you go. So that's another good little tip. But usually what I tell folks is, look, if it had baseboard heat at one point, most folks aren't gonna strip that around. Like, it still works. Same thing with like old radiator heat. Like, it could be that it still works, but now it's just a secondary heat source versus the primary heat source.
Are there ever situations where they'll put a heat pump in and just use the baseboard heat as like auxiliary heat?
Yeah, a lot of people like it because I mean, some people might like their room hotter than their common area, or they might have a guest or a roommate or, you know, a family member that always likes their room hotter. And so what's nice when you do have that set up is now they have individual zone control over heat at least.
So in other words, there's no requirement for that to be disabled in any way, if you put in a heat pump? Okay.
Yeah, the only thing that's required, if you guys don't already know, is if you abandon an oil system,
Yes.
you're required to notify, I think, the health department within 30 days that you've abandoned it.
DEQ.
DEQ. That you're no longer using oil. So, anything else in there? I remember that one. Yeah, that gutter extension was funny because it almost piped its way right back into the crawl vent. So, not quite how it was intended. All right, this one almost had nothing to say because it was a 1952 house, but like, I mean, I thought they just built the thing. It was so nice. So this is
Another
the
one,
nice renovated property, maybe some.
Almost nothing really to say about this one because it's totally renovated. Everything's brand new. It's on a concrete slab, and so it is nice to walk around barefoot with your socks and kind of feel the different movements of the ground. On flips, you can kind of get up here and look at the detail work and see how good of a job. But even this backsplash is nice and tightly grouted. A little space here, but I mean, really good quality work. Sometimes you can kind of get down here and look at the shoe molding and kind of see how complete things are. You can open up appliances and see they've been used. This is obviously brand new. Sometimes they use like scratch and dent stuff. Usually when I tell folks that stainless on the inside of a dishwasher is usually a more expensive dishwasher than this plastic dishwasher. So that's always nice. But the concealed buttons is something that's usually more expensive than buttons on the outside. So different things like that. Single piece and sink. Another little trick on kitchens I usually point out is if it's dovetail joinery here, so that's where, you know, the ends join together like that versus just a butted together joint. So these are usually extra cabinets when it's just dovetail joinery. And then soft close too if you want. And then sometimes those are soft close but the doors aren't. But this one, both the doors are. Just notice another little detail. They even did
my phone sideways. That's a backsplash above the fridge.
Definitely didn't need to. They could have just cut it right there, but that's a nice little above and beyond that you might
behind the fridge.
Why we want gutters to extend away from the house. You can kind of see the wet spot, but obviously the water's gonna be coming back in there. It'll wick its way through the wall. So just throw a little extension on that. And even on a renovation, I'm still gonna look at the heat pump Concord. I don't think I've ever heard of Concord. But let's see.
We're in a high def area?
Yes, must be.
So I'm not seeing any date on this. Chances are, and I could look up Concord, but chances are it was
Never seen a
23.
cage around the unit like
So the
that.
third and the fourth year of the year. Every once in a while, I'll see units where it's actually the first and the second number of the year. But on this one, I would have to think it's the second. Maybe it's the third and the fourth. So yeah, sometimes even though it's a flipped or renovated property, doesn't mean the heat pump is new. It could be some used heat pump that they just threw into the project. Here's a good look at one of those big collars, pipe collars.
Those are roof collars. They're like $150 to replace versus replacing the whole roof. So a lot of times you might see like a roof leak, and it's those things, not the roof. So everybody's like, oh, the roof must be leaking. It's like, well, no, the collar vent, the pipe collar, the roof collar, whatever word you want to put on it, that's what's leaking, not the roof. It's $150 to fix instead of $20 to fix. So. All right, anything from the renovated property? I hope not, because that like puts us right at time. But you know, on the renovated properties, the flip houses is a lot more of the detail stuff. And so certainly tile work is an easy thing to point out, like how well the job did they do on tile. So backsplashes, bathrooms, you know, did they use a Schluter strip? Like, it's a nice, straight, thin line to have the tile stop versus where it hits the vinyl, I mean, the drywall, or do they just stop the tile? Do they use a bullnose tile, like you're supposed to kind of end into drywall, or do they just use a regular old normal wall tile, and then just stop it on the line? You know, it's gonna be a lot of that type of stuff. I showed a flip house a few days ago, and it was the classic kitchen drawer wouldn't open because the stove handle was in the way. So that drawer, and there was only like 4 drawers total, that drawer was in essence rendered useless because of the stove handle. So now you only have 3 drawers in your entire kitchen, you know, stuff like that. So yeah, I think some other stuff. So hopefully that's a whole bunch of tips and tricks, but I mean, again, this is just what I'm doing. Like, the filming I did, you know, was really only, let's say, 8 minutes per house. So if we're walking through a house with a buyer for 30 minutes, we're doing all the normal chit chat stuff and talking about how great the countertops look and how great, you know, the bathrooms appear. But in the middle, I'm like weaving in all these different things, like, hey, this will probably come up on a home inspection, or hey, just so you know, this probably isn't quite right. You know, house is totally fine, it's not going anywhere, but you know, that this might get kind of called out later. So that hopefully when we start talking about an offer, one, they're confident about their purchase and they feel like, okay, there's no big red flags here, so I'm making a good choice. But also where they might make stronger terms as needed if you're competing against with other folks on really adjusting those inspection terms, or so that when you do the home inspection, they're not rattled. They're not thrown off, they're not looking to get out of the contract because all of a sudden they're hammered with really big, scary, new information. Hopefully you got ahead of any of those big, scary things, you know, ahead of time, so that, yeah, like now you have the factual report to kind of justify maybe some negotiations, or just giving them the extra information they need to schedule something like after closing, but it's not earth-shattering, this is not what we signed up for type of information. So hopefully that helps. You know, a lot of it does come from experience, a lot of it does come from walking through lots of different houses, and so that would be going back to my point of looking for those go direct houses if you got nothing to do, going to open houses, but walking through houses, following home inspectors when you do have a home inspection, asking the home inspectors like, hey, what's the remedy to this? Or, hey, I saw in this other house, the pressure relief valve stopped at the stand. Is that allowed, or does it need to go to the floor? But like asking questions, not just specifically about the house that they're inspecting, but go ahead and pick their brain on all this other stuff, because the more you can learn what they're looking for, the smarter you'll look in front of your clients, and in essence, the better service you'll provide to your clients. So hope that helps. Any last remaining questions or concerns? Yeah.
I just had a quick one. When you're doing the electrical panel with the 200 amp, what's the contacts that you're adding behind sharing that?
Just if there's 2 of them, then you get a 400 amp. And there's some that are lower, like 100 amp. And so the issue would be if you had like 100 amp and it didn't have a heat pump already, you start running out of power when you start adding more modern amenities or modern conveniences. So that'd be more for like older homes. But it's also sometimes just to kind of show that that's a 200 amp, you know. So I've had some buyers ask me like, oh, how many amps service is it? And it's like, I don't know. So now I know, you know, just look at that top breaker and it's, you know, 200 amp. All right, thanks for being here. Don't forget to pick up a shirt if you